Well, let's continue then to get a reaction from that budget speech. And the Alternative Information and Development Centre, or AIDC, has criticised Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's budget, saying the tokenistic increases in social grants will not be enough to soften the deep social crisis faced by the majority of the impoverished South Africans. In a statement titled, "The 2024 budget will make things even worse," the Cape Town-based outfit says the budget will also result in a further breakdown of service delivery in the country, the perpetuation of mass unemployment, and the continuation of unparalleled levels of inequality. Dominic Brown is the head of and coordinator of the Economic Justice Cluster within the AIDC and joins us now to elaborate. Thank you so much, Dominic, for your time this morning. Just talk to us a little bit about the AIDC. I know that it was formed in 1996. Talk to us about, the role and the work you do, very high level in terms of civil society.
Thank you, Nati. AIDC supports a range of social movements and trade unions to undertake research on unfolding and strategic areas of the economy and in terms of climate change, to help their advocacy to push for a more redistributive economy that can facilitate a transition from mass unemployment and climate change to a low-carbon, reindustrialized economy.
Now, your statement that you've released shortly after the minister's speech touches on a number of issues, including social grants, the public sector wage bill, etc. I'm more interested in what you are saying about it being a tokenistic increase in social grants will not be enough to soften the deep social crisis faced by a majority of impoverished South Africans. Just expand on that for us.
So very shortly, Nati, in the first instance, when we look at the increases of the grants, while they may match consumer price inflation, it doesn't match the level of increases in the cost of living faced by the majority of people living on social grants. So whilst we may have a 100 Rand increase, if we take consumer price index into account, it's really a 2 Rand real increase. However, if you take into account the increase in the cost of the food basket for the majority of South Africans, it would actually mean that all grants are worth less this year than it was last year. You will be able to buy less bread, less maize, less food in general to support your families. In addition to that,
continue, Dominic.
We're seeing massive cuts to the budgets of education and healthcare. And so the budgets for medicine, for healthcare workers are continuing to be eroded. Less money for healthcare workers, less money for beds, for linen, for all the things that's required for a public healthcare to operate effectively are being cut. And so you'll see a continuation of overworked healthcare workers, longer waiting lines to be seen. And in certain instances, you'll also see, instead of being able to treat people with medicine in drips, you'll have them being treated by water, which is a case with a dear comrade and friend of ours who passed away yesterday, in part due to the massive budget cuts to the health sector, leading to the failure to treat our friend effectively.
And one of the things that you're also mentioning is that, the minister's smoke and mirrors story of additional money spending will decrease, in a real sense, in terms of, spending will decrease in real terms by 21 billion Rand between 2023 and 2024, once inflation has been adjusted. I mean, one would then assume that you are basically saying that the minister is misleading South Africans.
Effectively, yes. We have to look at what the budget means in real terms, not just in terms of the numbers at a general level. And in fact, when we look at the total budget as the minister did say correctly, 20% is going to debt service costs. This is despite using the profits accumulated on Jafekra, as you said in the introduction to the news brief. So rather than using that debt relief to alleviate the social crisis, it was really to just plug the debt of Eskom. And whilst this is not a problem in principle, the government once again missed the opportunity to increase or to shift the debt from Eskom and increase its liabilities to the government employees pension fund, which it already owes 20% of its total debt to, as opposed to putting it on the budget, which would have freed up 200 billion rand, at least 100 billion in this year, in additional resources for social spending. And what's behind the Sunati is the idea that cutting budgets or cutting spending will help reduce overall debt levels. But in reality, what you're seeing is the shrinking of the economy and the possibility of continued unsustainable debt levels over the medium term. And behind all of this is the way in which the government's thinking about the economy. And this needs to change from one that says prioritize debt and growth to one that says through redistribution, through spending, through social spending and investment in strategic areas of the economy, that would invariably create growth in and of itself and reduce the debt levels over the medium term. So we really need to, besides all the numbers of the budget, what's behind it is an anti-poor budget. And behind that, as I was saying, is the way in which the government is currently thinking about how the economy should be developed.
I mean, you're not alone in terms of, calling this an anti-poor budget. But of course, we know as much as most South Africans are being affected by what is currently happening with the country's economy, there are some sectors within our society that are more impacted. And you think that, you're making the point about government's disregard, in particular for Black working class women. Just expand on this, particularly in terms of as we try and zone in terms of how can we then support, those that are hardest hit here?
Absolutely. So one, if you look at who are the majority of people who are receiving social grants, it's Black working class women. They'll be able to spend less money, or they will actually be able to get less goods and services for their money, given the cuts to the budget, higher levels of starvation, and women trying to feed families with even less and less. As women are, working class women are head the majority of households in the country. Secondly, working class women are the ones who are looking after the people at home, but also in the health sector. And they're also the majority of our teachers. 70% of the public sector is educators, healthcare workers, and in correctional services, and the majority of them by far are women who are supporting big working class families. And so the cuts to both the public sector wage bill means reduced amount of people working in the health sector and in education, leading to larger classroom sizes and deteriorating health and education outcomes. Who bears the burden on this? Who bears the burden when you cut social services in real terms? This is working class women. In addition to that, the government makes no contingencies for example, increase or providing free sanitary pads for women, which could be one step forward towards a gender responsive budget. And when going through the budget, very little attention in general is paid to thinking about how the budget can be a means of reducing inequalities, particularly towards reducing the massive inequalities faced by Black working class women.
Dominic, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really do appreciate it. Dominic Brown is the head coordinator of the Economic Justice Cluster within the Alternative Information and Development Centre, essentially saying that the budget was heavily anti-poor, and also saying that the tokenistic increases in social grants will not be enough to soften the deep social crisis faced by many South Africans.